is another day that we are going to talk about something that is affecting our society. And this morning, Nairobi time, I want to talk about the issue of indiscipline in schools. What we are seeing from the students is really, really disturbing. And since the kids went back to school, we have seen all manner of drama, all manner of unrest from children who are supposed to focus on education. And as I talk about this, I want to share my thoughts from the outright and say that this can only mean two things. That there is a very serious challenge with parenting. That the children are doing this, I mean, after staying home for 9 months, that is the longest I think our children have stayed home without going back to school, and it shows that there could be a gap in terms of how we are bringing up these children, and that is why when they are not in school, they are now going back to school, and we are having the kind of problems we are having. So the other thing it could as well mean is that the school environment is not conducive for learning, and perhaps time has come for us to ask ourselves the tough questions. Among the questions that we need to ask ourselves: are parents abdicating their responsibility in bringing up children with the right etiquette and mannerisms expected in a society? Are we bringing children who are growing up as social misfits, children who cannot deal with stress, children who cannot live in an environment where they are supposed to adhere to certain guidelines? That is a question that we must ask ourselves. Are parents leaving their role to the teachers? Because how come when children are at home for a month in after the first term, for a further month after the second term, and about for 2 months, almost 2 months in after the third term for the festive period, how come then we are not having as many incidents of violence by the children as we have had? What kind of content are we exposing our children to when they are at home? As parents, are we controlling the content that our children are watching? Maybe they're in the digital age, they are exposed to violence, they're exposed to extremism, or probably it is how we live as parents in our homes. Are we violent ourselves as parents? And are we then giving our children that kind of role modeling? Those are questions that we must ask ourselves if we are to get over this debate, because even when we've had cases of student unrest in the past, we've only heard of them banning schools, dormitories, or being demonstrating, or isolated cases of misbehavior. But we are now having children who have the courage and the guts to confront teachers. Children like we have seen yesterday, and let's just watch this clip to see how bad the scenario is for our children.
Fungua hiyo ingine.
Hiyo kitu ikafungwa leo.
Last year kweli.
Wewe iko na masiku. Ai. Nisikia kama ni mimi na.
Aki watoto wetu, Mungu wangu wake.
Ati? Damu inaenda.
Sasa kwa nini? Hiyo ni unasema mwaka last year. Unasema last year kama mwezi gani?
So there you go. You've seen what that boy has done, and apparently he did this months ago when he was at home. It is only when he has gone to school that now someone is the teachers have discovered because of misbehavior. Surely for a child to have had those how can I even describe that? tying himself in the manner that he has done it, and the parents have never noticed, or the guardians have never noticed, it leaves a lot to be desired, whether indeed we are playing our roles as parents. Or do we have a case of, and this is a reality about our society, that in situations where you have, single parents, are those gaps in parenting manifesting themselves in the children? Those are questions that we must ask ourselves if we are to address this problem. And I candidly submit to us this morning in this, and let's have this candid conversation, because like they say, the moment we stop talking, that is when we lose it. That is when everything goes haywire. That is when we start fighting. That is why we are seeing the moral decadence that we are now witnessing in schools. And is it perhaps because our leaders are also not playing their role? If members of parliament, like we saw, can be violent against each other, who are these children in their juvenile, psychology, in their thinking? Probably those are their role models, and they have every reason to go out there and say, I mean, if our leaders can do it, if our parents are doing it, why not us? That is something that we must seriously, as a society, address. Now, the other thing that perhaps we need to ask ourselves is, are we losing that element of social responsibility in terms of bringing up children, where the parents, the neighbors, the teachers, and everybody was involved in upbringing of children? Because I remember when we were growing up, it didn't matter whether your father or mother was around or not. Anybody in the neighborhood, if they found you on the wrong, they would reprimand you. They would even cane you thoroughly. And when you get home, nobody is going to question as long as you were on the wrong. Parents were not living. I remember if I was spanked by someone who's not my father or my mother or my uncle or relative, and my father was not going to yell at those people that they have disciplined their child. So are we now losing that social fabric that raised us, where you knew that if you were on the wrong, it didn't matter who was close by, whether it was your mother, your auntie, a stranger, or anyone, you would still be whipped back to your senses. And that is how we have grown up. Are we now losing that? And if we are, is it about time that we ask ourselves the hard questions as a society? The other thing that I think we need to ponder is what Honorable Susion, never mind that he's fighting battles of his own as Secretary General of Kenya National Union of Teachers, but he says that perhaps we need to ask the question whether we need boarding schools in this country. Are they the right institutions to bring up our children? Are they a catalyst for children losing their touch, losing their contact with the parents, and the parents are raising children who they do not know? I mean, sometimes you've been called or you've seen your child do something and you actually ask yourself whether this is the same child that you know. So is it about time that we ended boarding schools at basic education level? Those are questions we need to ask ourselves, because our parents are dumping kids in boarding schools, and at the end of the day, they do not know their children. It is the teachers who know the children. It is the teachers who are left with their responsibility of being teachers and being parents at the same time. I believe those are questions that we need to ask ourselves. And this morning, honestly, I want to say three things. One, we must resort to factory settings. When we grew up, tungechapwa tu na mtu yote, and hakuna kitu ungefanya. Your mother was not going to yell in the neighborhood at so and so amechapa mtoto wake or something like that, as long as the child was wrong. I think we need to go back to that. Number two, this thing of kusema ati watoto wasichapwe, sisi tulitandikwa sawa sawa. Ulikuwa unatandikwa shuleni, ukirudi nyumbani bado unatandikwa. And you couldn't do anything. Ukijaribu kukimbia kwa auntie, sijui kwa shosho, kwa magokoro, sijui kwa babu yako, bado huko unatandikwa, unarudishwa. The uncle akikupata, I remember. And my family can bear me witness. I once ran away from home, nikaenda and my uncle brought me back in the middle of the night, na nikatandikwa hiyo usiku na nikalala njaa. That is what we need to go back to. This thing of saying ati mtoto sasa anaweza simamia mwalimu, ati mtoto anakunjia mwalimu ngumi. Where did they get this courage from, honestly? And as a parent, are you proud of your child when they do that? For you to come out and complain about ati mtoto amechapwa sijui nini. We are raising these children to be social misfits and irresponsible. That is why wakikosa kitu wanaiba. Akikosa kitu kuiba kwa nyumba, if they don't find whatever they are looking for in the house, they go to look for it on the street. That is why we are having a moral decadency at a rate that in another 10-20 years we would not have any children. We will not have people who will be responsible. That is why people are killing each other. A small disagreement or a small quarrel in a relationship, and watu wanatoleana mangumi, watu wanapigana, people are dying, families are dying as we know, as we once knew it. So I think we must go back to that situation where iman kusema ati mtoto hawezi chapwa. I honestly think we lost it. Children, hata Biblia inasema that ukinyima mtoto kiboko ni kuharibu mtoto. Spare the rod and spoil the child is a biblical concept. We are all either Christians or Muslim or Buddhist, and that concept cuts across. So where has this thing come? Ati mtoto hawezi chapwa. That is why mtoto kwa nyumba mtoto ati mnaongea na mtoto, mna discuss nini na mtoto? And I'm not being a dictator. I'm just saying there is a level of indulgence that you can have with a child. And kuna mahali the whip or the rod inamrudisha kwa laini. So we now have to have this serious conversation. And C.S. Magoha, for once I agree with you on this. I think we need to allow corporal punishment in schools. Let the children be disciplined. Let the cane be brought back. Wacha watoto watandikwe. Na kama walimu, wale watu ambao wanaingia kwa teaching profession are weaklings, are people who cannot raise their hand, ama they are people who cannot discipline a child, then we need to recalibrate the entry or standards for teaching. Otherwise, so that we have the right people in the profession. It was once the hallowed profession. Right now, every Tom, Dick, and Harry, including people who they themselves are not disciplined, ati ndo tunapatia watoto kufundisha. Surely we must recalibrate our standards in terms of our education sector. And on this one, I have talked about 3 things. 1, the social responsibility in raising our children. Let us go back to that. As long as nobody takes advantage, and even when anybody took advantage, the society had a way of dealing with such cases. But they were isolated incidents. Now, number 2, let us consider, return of the cane in schools. I say that without batting an eyelid. I say that without fear of contradiction. Sisi tulitandikwa, ndio maana we are disciplined. Ndio maana tunajua limits. Ndio maana tunajua where it begins and when it has to stop. Surely, let us rescue our children. When we think that by sparing the rod we are helping our children, we are actually spoiling their life. And 10-20 years from today, they will be blaming you, the mother. They will be blaming you, the father. They will be blaming you, the guardian who raised them and never taught them a sense of responsibility, kwa sababu umewalea kama mayai. That's it for now. Let's have a responsible day and a responsible time, and keep the conversation alive on our social media platforms, and let's see how far we can take this conversation and whether we can shape how we live in our society. Thank you very much. Adios. All the best. God bless you.